So amidst the smoothest transitions into the introduction that has ever happened in the history of doing that, if anybody's keeping record, we had nobody actually watching it, but maybe on a archive, somebody will appreciate it. Well, we have Anton here, we have Rick Thompson, and we have Dr. Detroit. He's going to co-host with us a little bit, and then we'll get into more of a kind of a direct conversation with you a little bit later on. Let's just recognize our awesome sponsors here so we can get rolling in earnest. Rick?
I don't want to roll in anybody named Ernest, but the Botanical Company sponsors Jazz Cabbage Cafe, so does Redemption, Real Leaf Solutions, Detroit Nutrient Company, GoGreenMI.com, Custom 420 promos featuring Culture Clothing.
Very nice.
Why do you have to always add that people Ernest thing in there, man? I don't name Ernest.
Maybe one day you find the right guy named Ernest.
My search
Red Setter, of course. You know, these guys, Red Setter, part of a Michigan Bros Grow Show, and Polarity Science and some others. It's an amazing amount of shows. I know, otherwise busy doing work for himself and for other. I think for a company, if I'm not mistaken, and several hours of broadcasting per week too, with some good information. So look out for all that stuff. It's good content. Yeah. So, we talked a lot about testing labs and stuff like that. Our last couple of shows, including a special edition show. Mike, Dr. Detroit, are you familiar with the lab controversy going on in the commercial?
Yes. I watched that show where you had that lab guy on for almost 2 hours.
Yeah, Leave or Lev or Leave.
He was okay with us pronouncing it anyway.
He was okay with it everywhere. Hey man, here we go. Here's an update on Adam. He is not with us right now for sure, but he is watching, and he says hello from Providence Hospital. I took a fall the other day, and the pain finally got to me. That really sucks, man. Our best wishes, our positive vibes, are however we want to convey some healing over to you somehow. Really hope that you feel better soon. That really sucks after having a major surgery on your back and taking a fall, man.
I want to send Adam the blessings and healing powers of the church or the Temple of Holy Smoke, where we worship the psychological and spiritual benefits of cannabis. So we send those benefits to Adam to get him back on his feet, because he's our most colorful character in all of Michigan, including the Upper Peninsula.
Right on.
The most colorful character. Now, that's a designation you don't hear assigned very often, and I think Adam meets that description. Actually, I do. Yep. The only thing I have to ask Adam is the ground okay? I'm sorry.
Wow, too early, man.
Too early. Adam can.
We're having a nice moment here, and then you have to step up and kind of insert a little evil. I guess
destroy the mood. Sure, that's
in the spirit of Adam. Maybe he kind of appreciates that in some back.
First of all, he flipped off the screen when I said that. But second of all, he's also laughing. So
back surgery's tough. I mean, that's some of the most painful types of surgeries you can have, and
he's had a few of them too. Just a perspective and add it up a little bit. So
hang on, just to give Adam a little bit more praise. In addition to all the different things that he's done historically, Adam's still on the board of directors of MiNORML. He still does the Medical Mondays podcast every week. He still does this podcast every week, and remains active in planning and executing events all across.
Shows up at events and speaks at them and facilitates them, and just gets out.
He's always there. You can always pretty much count on him to show up.
Yep, good guy. So heal fast and chuckle a little bit, no problem.
So, if you're up for it, Adam, you're welcome to join us. You're also welcome to throw in some snide comments on, in the comment thing. But on Thursday, there's social equity education session being put on by the CRA, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency, and it says featuring an overview of compliance cannabis testing in Michigan. So that has my interest because of all the stuff that's been going on lately.
Anton and I just had our monthly meeting with the director of Brisbane as part of the Consumer Connection. We talked about testing, but obviously they were very close to the vest because they can't speak about open cases. But I'm not surprised. They seemed very focused on that issue.
I thought that was a great meeting, Rick. I thought even though they were very professional and made sure not to disclose anything that they're not supposed to, you can definitely feel the vibe that they're doing the best they can with what they have.
And of course, they have a lot of limitations that we in the regular community don't have because we don't face threats of lawsuit and we don't have regulators that provide rules for us to accommodate. I did ask, however, if Viridis Labs had scheduled a contested court hearing for their disciplinary action that's coming up because the 21-day period for them to request it on their own had expired. They said that they did not, but that one was being scheduled anyway because that's standard procedure. They just didn't have the date yet. So we do have some more action coming up very quickly, I think, in regards to this issue, Jamie.
Okay, so you don't have to reply within. I wonder what the advantage is for replying within 21 days if you go to a hearing anyway.
If you choose a different action, you could choose a countersuit. You could choose to accept some level of responsibility and then negotiate some kind of a settlement with the CRA, or you could on your own request this mediated kind of a.
So, or you let it expire and it automatically triggers into this hearing. Okay,
exactly right. Yep. If you do nothing, one's automatically scheduled because you're about to be sanctioned in some way, and this is your only opportunity to complain about it.
I see. Right on.
They seemed on top of it. I mean, they really did. They're not. Hey, look, they don't want to get dragged through the mud any more than is necessary on this. And I think that I felt that like their heart was in the right place on it at least. So I think that it was a really good conversation. I left that meeting feeling like, wow, I think their things hopefully will change.
That's good because there are a lot of people, including myself, said it on here. Many people I've spoken to just individually about these issues have been really concerned that the state's kind of dropped the ball and, just somehow allowing this to go on and just not doing anything about it. But there's a lot more to it. There's counter challenges. There's liabilities. There's these, arguments being made by, really good lawyers that, have to be considered and draws out the process longer. And there's all that kind of stuff going on. And it's hard to really understand it in its whole scope. And the state doesn't talk about it, obviously, because of that stuff is going on. And then we don't know. And it looks like they're just letting them just continue doing it, but it's not really like that. And I do. Go ahead, Brook.
This is where citizen activism, like what we're doing right now, plays an important role because the government, during their investigation, has to be closed off. They can't superficially. It may look like they're not doing anything, but we the activists keep this issue alive. Anton. Forget it. I can't make my thumb go that way. Anton and Dr. Detroit, Jamie, Adam, Brook, the guys from Medical Mondays, 420 Post, all the different things that we do. This keeps this issue fresh in people's mind. And it also sort of prevents people who are, in our opinion, taking advantage of the community. It holds them up to a standard and makes sure that they get a consequence for their actions. I honestly and truly believe that Viridis has been left out of a lot of things that happened over the last 12 months because of their terrible attitude. They've been rejected for sponsorship at fairs and festivals. I know that for a fact because people have told me that they have personally told them they cannot come. So
Kirk, jump on here and join us, man. Go ahead, finish up, Rick. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say, in this instance, what we're doing right now, I'm nobody's bitch, but we're sort of carrying the water for the MRA by making sure that the real villains in the industry are known and held to account while they're in the process of official sanction. So, congratulations to all of those activists out there doing that.
And I'll say this too. One of the things, Rick, that I thought was interesting during the meeting that was 100% valid point is when basically the state's saying, due process is not a quick thing, right? And sometimes, I mean, looking at this case, it may have been better and worked out for the betterment of the cause at the end of the day to kind of let them kind of continue on doing what they're doing, like a big trap type of thing. While in the end of the day, the case is being set up, and hopefully they want this to stick. I believe that's what I got out of the conversation. And like I said, due process isn't a quick thing, but at the end of the day, I feel and I hope that the right side of the issue is going to be resolved with the right thing happening here.
Yeah, well said. I agree.
I'll be happy when there's some resolution. I mean, in addition, would like it to be resulting in Veritas going away somehow, but I will be happy with whatever the resolution is. This whole thing is really strange, and for everybody, it needs to come to an end and get straightened out. There's a headlines, not necessarily cannabis related, but related to this very discussion, some of the deeper history of these operators of Veritas that we've talked about on here, and working with Detroit police labs and stuff like that. And I just thought, since there's kind of a parallel or connection here, I'll let people know about it. This is just from today. The headline is former Michigan State Police breathalyzer technician sentenced for falsifying records. So there's that type of thing that is unfortunately not uncommon. But if somebody is busted doing that, do you let them then, give them a license in this industry when so many people by that same review board were getting refused entry into this world? But go ahead, Rick.
Well, that situation with the breathalyzer tests, the machines were faulty, and he fraudulently manufactured maintenance records for these to show that they were operating properly, but they weren't. This just shows how terrible the system is to the average Joe. They felt like these breathalyzer tests, having them was more important than having them be accurate. And if you're misusing a tool, someone should take the tool away from you. That's how it is. And we, the people, are the someone that takes the tools away from law enforcement when they're not using them properly. So
extrapolate that out to these new saliva tests that they're trying to do with unproven science, with the, to try and pin people with DUIs who are cannabis, or who they believe are under the influence of cannabis. So I think it's going to be this is an evolving thing. That's just not, these breathalyzer tests isn't the only place this is going to occur.
They tried for years to set a THC standard here in Michigan, similar to what they have in other states, per se limits, percentage of your blood for nanogram testing. Just not accurate. And then they now want to decide if you have any kind of a sign of cannabis at all, any kind of THC in your mouth, then you're assumed to be impaired. That's inaccurate too.
Stupid. Yeah. It's stupid. So Kirk's trying to get on, but he was saying, love your shirt. This is, I bleached, tie-dyed it. I think it looks pretty cool too. I've had this for a really long time, and I like it. Hopefully he'll be able to make it on. I sent him the link again, and just having some technical difficulties, I guess.
And Captain's, of course, one of those guys, Captain Kirk Reed, who's been with us since the beginning. Remember back in the MAC days, and Kirk was so instrumental in helping out the launch of the organization and helping that poor woman who was
making awesome medibles for Third Coast right off the bat, man. He was the original dude.
Nope, I remember Third Coast paint parties, trying to get the bottom room ready.
Does anybody have any longer term consistent branding in Michigan for a cannabis product than Captain Kirk?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
I think of some of the brands from the early days, but they're all gone. I mean, maybe Greba, maybe Jake, but not as long as Kirk, though.
I'm waiting for Captain Kirk to lead an intergalactic journey to bring his products to other galaxies.
Yeah. We're hoping in 4 or 5 months it will be back in Michigan.
Yeah. which seems like a different galaxy than Oklahoma.
From Oklahoma, yeah.
That. Yeah.
I hope it is.
That's a big difference.
Huge difference. Spent a lot of time in lovely Lawton, Oklahoma, Fort Sill, lovely place, enchanting little area.
I hung out in Norman for a full day about, I don't know, like 40 years ago or something, 35 years ago.
Oklahoma City's nice, beautiful city.
Tulsa's
I
supposed
love
to be pretty cool too, from what I understand.
Tulsa is a booming area right now for the, especially in cannabis. And not that Oklahoma City isn't, but Tulsa's really got it going on.
Right on. Hey, Kirk, so you were just up here, and not for the happiest of reasons, but for important reasons. And I'm not sure, Mike, if you heard that Doug Orton has passed away from the Brighton Compassion Club and, other things. And there was a memorial for him, and Kirk was up here for that. And you want to address that a little bit, Kirk? We talked about it on the show last week, but you were very close to Doug, obviously. You came up in order to help pay your respects and to be there for him.
Orton, that was the gentleman that there's so many things that he done. I remember back in 2007, he started they had the Brighton Compassion Club. And Compassion Clubs were the clubs where caregivers, they traded recipes, taught each other grow techniques. They traded each other genetics. It was a learning thing. And then along came the dispensaries. And when I was serving there with Doug at the Brighton Compassion Club, who was the leader, I was, given the duty of a sergeant at arms there. I was very proud of that. And then I went and opened Third Coast. And I do remember a lot of the people that sat on the board were very upset with that when I went to open the very first dispensary. It took me a few years to find out why Doug was so upset when I went and opened the dispensary. And please, I hope no one's mad at this man. It just, when it happened, he was so angry over it because he saw what was going to happen to the community way before it did happen. I didn't see his point then. I didn't really agree. But when I look back on things now and the way our communities went, this is exactly what he told me and why he was so angry. Whether that's right or wrong, that was Doug's position. The man also wanted to be buried and he was cremated, and he wanted to have a pound put in there with him to be cremated. Well, no place would do that, and I don't understand why. It goes up in the air, it's smoke, it ain't gonna smell any different than burnt hair or skin, so I couldn't figure that out why, but I guess there's legal reasons for that. But I think a person's last wish should be granted. Again, who am I to say all that? But Doug Orton, let me get back to that, was a wonderful man. He taught the Compassion Club there. He taught so many people on how to grow techniques. In fact, my first grow Bible of Ed Rosenthal came from Doug Orton before I even got the chance to meet the man. And Doug has also done so much when he saw people out there hurting from their diseases. This is the guy that taught me the compassion side of it. He's the one that would show up to your house with a bag of whatever it was you needed, or some dabs or an edibles. Doug was the first, what would you call it? The muffin man. And Doug is the one that got me into edibles. When everybody looks back on everything, I was laying in the hospital up there at the U of M, and Doug brought me a muffin, and man, I ate it like you would see on a cartoon because that's all they would give me. They thought I was a drug seeker and wouldn't give me anything. Well, that little muffin kicked my butt more than a deal of Dilaudid did. And that's when I told myself right then and there, I'm going to do this and get off all them pills. And it took me a while. And I remember the doctor up there at the U of M saying if I didn't sign a paper saying I would no longer use cannabis, that they weren't going to give me anything. So I went through all those things. I went through the, the drug withdrawal after being on 53 narcotics. I did it cold turkey with cannabis. It wasn't easy. I'm not going to lie. There was points where I thought I was going to die. And then there's situations that I found out I could have died. And then those doctors months later, well, why didn't you call us? You could have died from all that. I did call you. I was crying and begging for your help, but you guys wouldn't do anything. So back to all that, I credit Doug Orton to helping me get off the pills and all that back then, because he's the one that really showed me the steps of what cannabis and took with it. Then, when I started doing stuff, I started thinking, well, there's got to be more than muffins and things like that. And nowadays, it's really crazy how far it's coming, because I've done soups and things like that. And a lot of people, the older folks out there are searching for medicine to help them. And one thing that they're tired of is the sugar. And don't get me wrong, I like sugar. I make a lot of sugar products. But it was important that we started developing things that were non-sugar. I'll never forget sitting in the hospital and talking to a doctor for about 45 minutes. And the man looked at me and says, Kirk, there's only so many brownies and cookies a person can eat. Sir, you have no idea what you're talking about. There's so much more than that now. And there's many things out there. There's many chefs out there doing things now. Microdosing is a big thing, and how wonderful that is. And the testing thing, that why it's so important on testing is folks like myself need that accurate testing. We need to know from this lab to that lab to that lab that those tests are somehow together. And I'm kind of looking forward to the third party thing, because it's great that they're all scientists. It's great that they all have those machines. It's great that they're all accreditable. But I want to make sure someone's stepping in there and making sure that guy running that machine does have that license, knows what he's doing, is accredited, and those results are coming back. Because for people like me that are putting out medications for people and stuff like that, we need that accuracy. And is it only in THC? No, I need to know about all the cannabinoids. I need to know about it all. So while I'm on that kick there, it's really important. And I'm glad to see Lev's doing what he does there at PSI. And I'm glad that some people are bringing accreditation. It wasn't about pointing out any lab except for birthdays. I mean, we all know what a piece of crap they are. But the point is that the consumer patients, they really need to know that they can trust these lab results. And, well, that came from this lab over there. It ain't worth a crap. Or this one over there, they don't know what they're talking about. And how can this one be 10 micrograms off compared to the other ones? So I hope all that comes together, just for a lot of reasons, for science-based and everything else like that. Lev brought up a lot of good things that he was doing in science there. And even the man said that when they did screw up, they still documented it and they put everything on there. Yeah. And those are things that I can honor. But again, when I'm going back to that, those things that need to know for people like myself in the business, those numbers need to be accurate across.
So what's going on in Oklahoma, man? How is the state of testing in Oklahoma?
It is horrible here. It's a joke, but there is no one mandating it, or they're too worried about mandating what kind of weed you're smoking or where'd you get that at, or they really don't care. And I'm sorry for those listening to me out there that may be a lab in Oklahoma. I think you're a joke, because most of them, when they come out, they'll ask you, literally, I'm not shitting you, excuse my language, but they will ask you, hey, what do you want the labs to read? What? Are you kidding me? But we've seen things like that. They probably have 20 labs here. I don't find any credibility in any of them. I do have to use one for when I put products out for my metric stuff. I must have that. I think the one that I'm using right now with other folks is about the best I'm going to get. But I have walked into some of these labs and seen people eating their lunch right out there in the middle of the lab. Are you kidding me? Or they'd be storing lab results that weren't even packaged. And I would see 150 different lab stuff that needed to be tested, whether it be edibles or marijuana or whatever. Excuse me, cannabis, for some of those that take offense to that. And
just laying out exposed.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so, and here's my point: there's nobody walking in there going, "Hey, you can't do this. This isn't credible. This isn't right." But hey, you've got an accreditation. You've got a scientist there. That's good enough for us. I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah, the accreditation is good for their procedures, but it doesn't dictate their day-to-day activities. You can you can do procedures properly, but still have a totally sloppy, unclean facility that you work in and give no confidence in your results.
Correct.
And right, they since they're not required to have high standards, and that takes more time and effort, I guess they don't sometimes. And you have to seek out those who take it upon themselves.
Now that Metric is coming out, they're finally coming out and doing their inspections at dispensaries and stuff like that, which is fine with me. I just think that they need to start stopping at these testing facilities and start checking them too. I'm sorry if I've made people out there mad with that, but I believe those things should be checked.
Yeah. I will say, as far as metric goes, I received a notification today via email that metric was incredibly slow and that there was some kind of a reason for it and everything else, blah, blah, blah. And it's not the first time I've received one of these notices. I just want to remind everybody that there are still people out there that think it would be a good idea to force all caregivers in the state of Michigan to use metric in order to track and trace their products and also to do all that. If you're looking at adding 30,000 people to a system that already can't handle the load that it's currently being given, what's that going to do? How is that positive for the industry? Certainly, and with no demonstrable need to do that because there's no health or safety emergency to point to.
It's being done to compromise the system, not to help anything or anybody.
Meanness, just people being mean and greed. I hate
and ignorantly believing that they're advantaging themselves.
Yep, which is greed, advantaging themselves at the expense of others. And I hate to use greed because
it doesn't really do that. It just hurts other people and doesn't really help them out. That
was my point. Yep. Yeah. It's going to swamp the system. It doesn't really have a purpose. So we may escape into summer break without these negative caregiver bills being introduced in the Michigan Senate, but they probably will be around in the fall. We keep getting told. So,
furthermore, how in the hell are you going to enforce that? Rick, you heard yesterday they're trying to slash employees. Where's the enforcement going to come on here? Why would you legislate something that simply it can't be overlooked at? It doesn't make any sense.
So last year's budget required licensing and regulatory affairs to have a 15% across the board personnel cut. Okay, thank you very much, Republican legislature. So we're going to chop it out, and the cannabis regulatory agency is making an argument that they're basically self-funded because the fees collected from cannabis companies are what pay the overhead at the CRA. So they shouldn't have to deduct the 15% personnel simply because they don't come from the general fund.
Right.
So, but it's still quite terrible.
But I wanted to ask this. I know when I came back there, just here recently, we got home about 11 o'clock last night. But my question is they were talking about edibles, and they said your geek no longer be able to be sold in Michigan because they have nerds on them, because that influences children.
Yeah, there's some weird.
Okay, well, let me go there, but I've seen gummies made out of gummy bears. I've seen the most packaging. I can't believe that. I mean, look, it is your responsibility as a patient. I understand that we shouldn't make these and all dedicated to children. I get that part, but isn't there a responsibility sometime that comes in when this person buys this package? I mean, again, I don't see where this really markets anything to a kid.
Yeah.
We just had somebody prosecute, or I believe the lady pled guilty the other day here to child endangerment or child abuse or something, where she left her package of edibles in the fridge, and the kid got a hold of them, brought them to school, handed them out to all the other kids, and it created a whole thing. All the kids had to go to the hospital and whatnot. And so I do agree there is definitely there is responsibility there on the consumer.
That elementary school is about 6 miles from my house, right where I'm sitting right now. And I can tell you that in interviews that I've seen with her, she said, I forgot they were there. She said, I stopped using them a long time ago. My issue is resolved, so I didn't need to use the gummies any longer. Sort of, forgot they were in a freezer. So in those instances, you're right, Kirk, we do need to have some greater responsibility, but they're not going to back off on their ban of cartoon characters or products that imitate popular foodstuffs.
Everything. But if someone wants a gummy that has some nerds on it and they tell them they can't have that because that's going towards a child, I'm sorry, that's ludicrous. Because we have to put this stuff in packages that the children can't see. The children aren't the ones walking into the dispensary and buying it.
No.
So
it's those times when there is some care. I don't know if it's even carelessness, but there is the ability because of the adult in the house has, something laying around. The kid gets into it. We don't want that. If that happens, though, you can feel a little bit better about the fact that it wasn't the alcohol cabinet or the pill cabinet. And, and we should not condone this kind of stuff, but we also shouldn't have the same kind of extreme concern because it isn't as
thing with alcohol, or if their uncle in there is a heroin addict, they can pick up a needle by accident.
Yeah, let me just inform you guys. Historically, this was contained in the MMFLA, passed in 2016. It was a legislatively created bill, which means they crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. So they're the ones that set this standard for prohibiting cartoon characters and other things on the outside. When we did the MRTMA, the legalization law in 2018, we tried very hard to match the language of the medical program to make it as seamless of an integration as possible. And that's one of the things that was carried over also. So that restriction originally was laid down by the legislature in 2016.
Okay, I understand the packaging and the Joe Camel lookalike things, but you can't sit there and tell me the flower that's going around Michigan doesn't have the great big runts on there or the Skittles pictures. Can you tell me that?
Bright colors and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So if somebody complains about it, they will evaluate it, I guess, and then come back and say if they think it crosses the line or not. That's happened, I guess. At least it's happened. I'm not sure how much, but
yep. No, they do publish those rules. And again, a lot of the stuff that they do is based on fear, not based on real world experiences. We just don't see a large rash of children ingesting medibles. We don't see that. So
Tanya's telling us a little bit more detail about that situation and why they, Yeah. So it's, there are levels of responsibility that you could evaluate from that situation.
Yep. Sunshine actually lives closer to that school than I do, I believe. So she and I are right in the same zone. So she's familiar with that story too.
We're in that.
Kirk Reed is an American hero.
But the first part is I love Jazz Cabbage. Why didn't you read that? I don't know.
Because Kirk's our guest and he should hear that.
All right. Well, he already knows he's an American hero.
I'm nobody's hero. I'm just a guy doing what we did in this community when we came along that Doug taught me. It was about compassion, and it really was. For me, that has not stepped out of my forte. If I see someone out there hurting and I can help them with cannabis instead of offering them a pill or whatever, then that's what we should do. I understand people. I've got a guy right now, a friend of mine I've known for 40 years, dying of cancer. Does know nothing about RSO, nothing about it. Here I am having to school these people on it, which is a good thing. And I'd rather see him do that than his chemo. And I've actually got some RSO for this man, and I hope it brings him back. Again, folks, it wasn't about me being a hero. That isn't why I got into this. I got into it to cure my MS. I'm using these things to fight my battles with my MS because the pills. Look, folks, when I got off those pills in 2007 or 6, right in that area, I was on 53 narcotics. I mean, 53 different pills I was taking. If anyone knows anything about Seroquel, I was on 1,500 milligrams of that twice a day. That's just that one. Those pills were eating my inside up. They made me angry. They made me mean. You talk about hiding inside from smoking a joint because we didn't need anyone. Try being a pill addict and addicted to that stuff. It was a horrible thing to go through. So if I could have got into this and made someone a gummy with nerd ropes on it or nerds on it, and that helped them overtaking an Oxycontin, man, I'm all for that. But for someone to tell me I can't do that because there might be a kid in the room or something, I want them to go sit and look at that person dying of that cancer or addicted to them pills and tell them, hey, I can't do this for you.
Yeah, but Kirk, nobody said that you can't. You're a patient. You can make your own gummies. You're a caregiver. You can make your own gummies. You can do whatever you want for your own personal and the people that you take care of. You just can't sell them in a retail environment. So the whole concept that somebody's telling you cannot it's not really real.
Yeah, that's only in the commercial system.
Right.
So that, but do you want to get into the commercial system and you want to have those products available, and that's kind of what you
not doing it illegally in the caregiver system. You take care of 5 people. That's
so caregiver takes care of more than that. We know that.
But anyway, you know what I'm telling you, still get in trouble for that. So
yeah.
Sorry, I'm kind of on that issue, or I have to pay a license to have this and this done and to help a patient. I don't understand that part of it. We built this community ourselves. We built it. You guys sitting on that panel, including you, Dr. Detroit, sat out at all those hot spots, collecting those signatures. Did we ever thought we were going to get kicked out of our own program? I mean, let me tell you something about here in Oklahoma. They don't even consider this medical. It's not a big deal. It's recreational. No one even talks about medical. And yet there's still a medical state. Now, you will find those few, I can't speak for everybody, that's still working in the patients and doing the right thing because they believe in that. That's what they were brought into this for. Again, we built this system when Bailey and up there had no idea about anything. None of these people did. And now all of a sudden, they're the experts telling me what we got to do when we were the ones that brought it forward to them. When there was no testing, and I remember I was one of the first people screaming there needed to be testing and have always used testing because I wanted to know what I was putting in my body didn't have mold or spider mites or spider mite droppings or any other bug droppings. That was the reason I got into it. And somewhere along all this, guys, I get the whole corporate thing. Would I like to get in there and put my edibles and have them? Yeah, but it's not the reason to get rich. It's because I want to see a really good quality medical edible put out there for the public instead of some guy using remediated weed because it's legal in the market and he's got a license and well, he can put it out there.
Speaking of that, Kirk, does that go on in Oklahoma on a regular basis?
Yeah. That their testing facility, there is no guidance for here. And I'm sorry, I see people are chiming in and texting. I don't know. For those of you who know me, I'm legally blind. So if I was to read your stuff, I've got to hold this magnifying glass, and it probably doesn't look very good. But yes, it happens here, and the facilities don't care. I literally got told by one of them, "Hey, what do you want your results to read?" And looked at the guy. Are you kidding me?
I think Jamie's referring to remediation, though. Do they remediate cannabis in Oklahoma?
It hasn't been. Some places, yeah.
Hey, Kirk, let us know. We're going to get into a little bit of a political conversation with Dr. Detroit here, which you're welcome to hang around for if you have some interest in that. But before that, we move on, let us know other stuff about Oklahoma that you think is interesting or that people should know about.
I think the worst thing for us, we finally just got rid of our dispensary, was the way they set those up. For those that have been to Oklahoma and know all about the churches and the Baptist thing and all that here, there's a lot of churches. There are more dispensaries than there are churches. Literally within a quarter, we're 7. I could walk out the front door. There's one there, one to my left, one to my right, one in the corner. Look, man, I get it, but that's so many that it's just too many. And you couldn't compete with these guys walking in. Like Man Cannabis walks in and says, "Hey, we got a 4-year plan that we plan to lose money and shut down all those old mom and pop shops. We don't want those. I can't with $99 ounce baller jars of diamonds."
Are they starting to shut down already?
Yeah, they're closed quick, left and right. Now you can look online and see a dispensary sell for here like crazy.
Was there local approval needed to open a dispensary? You make it sound as if anybody with a certificate of occupancy could just pop right open.
Pretty much pay.
They were pretty open in Oklahoma about it.
And walk into that city, and the cities had so many old buildings here and places that weren't doing anything. Like, yeah, man, we'll rent that to you. That's $2,000 a month. Here's your license.
That's one of the cool things about going for it too, and having it that open is those old places get fixed up. That happened all over Detroit too.
But now they're all shutting down because the people had to pay their taxes. For a wild market here. It really was. I mean, free game, and that was cool. I was all for that. But it got so bad that, a city would put it. Look, man, you can go to Oklahoma City. Let me use this for an example. Here's 2 dispensaries. That's how close they are to each other. Literally, with a gap between each building. So prices down here are different. Everybody's in a war at each other. I've got this. I've got the best. Kind of like we had it there. But what makes me upset, and before you go on to all this, is all the medical stuff, all the stuff that we brought forward to make this plant successful to us. When it started out, and Rick, you can come in on this, and Jamie, it was all about medical. We proved these medical issues. But
nobody without a card got into your center.
Even in Michigan, how can you sit there and tell me justifiably that someone without a card has access to more cannabis and can do more things with cannabis than a person with a card? You can carry more, you can have more, you can grow more. But that poor patient over there dying from his cancer, Crohn's, MS, or whatever, That's it. It's legal.
A lot of those people who do that have never taken it seriously to even have that kind of compassion or understanding.
Kirk, I'm curious, how has the culture, has it been embraced in Oklahoma? Like you said, you have a lot of the Bible Belt running through there, a lot of very conservative folks. Has the culture changed, or has it been more embraced, or is there infighting, or how does that work?
It's got a little bit of all the infighting here, just like we had back there. As far as, I'm going to call them Bible thumpers, and excuse me if I upset anybody. That's the only way I can think of it. A lot of them have either come on board with it or haven't. But the ones that have actually did it for the medical use. They actually saw it usable. Let me give you an example. For a moment, I had a couple of Bible thumpers really on blah, blah, blah on my case and doing things, edibles, this is a sin to God, you're making a drug, blah, blah, blah. Within about a month, maybe, I'll give it 2 months, someone in their family was dying of cancer. Well, they've done all the what do you call that stuff that they chemotherapy and all that thing wasn't working for them. So the guy that they've been over here slamming and giving hell to at the end, who do you think they reached out to?
Not Jesus.
Now, am I still going to walk away and say, hey, man, you guys have been such an ass to me, help you? No, that's not me. I'm going to make you an edible, whether it be CBD, whatever you need, and help you. If you need help with your cancer, and I don't make RSO, but I know the right people, I will get you on a conversation with Phoenix Tears and folks like that. Because I myself have seen that RSO, for an example, on Gersh Avery work, and it really took away his testicular cancer. So with proven things like this, to where all of us on here, including doctors,
he had abdominal cancer too, I think, at one point.
Yes, and it all took it away, and the doctors are sitting there scratching their head. Well, how did?
Well, I've seen that with patients at Third Coast over the years too, and they won't tell their doctor because they're scared they're going to get cut off of everything. They're on this experimental chemo. The tumor's shrinking. They're like, "Oh yeah, this is obviously our our experimental shit here. That's doing." You read the reports,
Some doctors have gotten on board and some are not. I mean, the best I really heard from a doctor here is, why wouldn't I want that in my case? Why would I not want another tool to help cure a human being?
That's the right attitude.
That's the oath that they took, essentially, right?
Exactly. Right. Why can't more doctors think like that? And that was one of the best things I had heard in a long time. The guy actually stood up and said, "Thank you for saying that, sir."
And we've seen all kinds of Henry Ford healthcare system, Beaumont healthcare system here in Michigan, saying things like, as a company, we can't endorse this, so we can't let any of our certified physicians have these pro cannabis attitudes. But I've always felt like that was a cop out on the individual doctor. You're still a one-on-one relationship with that patient. You're going to tell me that some bean counter that probably lives 2 states over is going to dictate policy to you when you're staring at a sick person right in their eye, and in your mind and in your heart what can help them, and you're going to let some bean counter tell you to keep your mouth shut.
Probably pretty sterile. You just step outside of those lines, you get taken out. You have to.
No.
I've had very good luck. I'll say Henry Ford for me, because that's where I get most of my care, is been very cannabis friendly. It was actually my pain doctor over there.
I think Zara has similar experiences.
Yeah,
the
pain doctor. I said, "Hey, man, you need to get your medical card." Like, they were all about it, right? They brought it up to me, so hopefully that's just. I don't know how far down that trickles down to individual doctors.
is now doing experiments, and they're kind of embracing the medical marijuana side. But I know Jamie and them and Daryl Stavros can come back to 2007 and 8 when that university and that hospital did not believe in marijuana or what we were.
No.
And they would kick you out of there real quick because you're a drug seeker, because you had marijuana in your system. But now they're starting to come around. And again, it's from folks like you folks out there and other folks in this industry that really brought this. This is the thing that upsets me. It was all brought forward for medical. Well, ever since legalization happened, medical's been forgot about. How are we going to make the money? How are we going to sell this? How are we going to keep it out of the kids? How are we going to start doing testing, this and this? But you see where I'm missing? Nothing was brought up about medical anymore. What about all the cancers it cured? What about all the testicular cancers and stuff it cured? Are we just going to ignore that or what?
Look, the shrinkage of the medical marijuana market is due to people not renewing their cards. It's not due to corporate action. People are just not renewing their medical marijuana cards, perhaps because they're finding they now know how to manage their issues, so they don't need to certify from the state. But the medical program's shrinking because individual citizens are making the decision not to pay the $40 for 2 years.
Well, again,
Some commercial places are prepared to help somebody through kind of that discussion more from a medical type angle. I mean, you can only take that so far in those discussions, but there are some places ready to help people out like that. And
There
they
are
should
fewer
stand
retailers
up.
renewing their
Yeah.
marijuana licenses too, though. There are fewer medical only, specifically designated medical.
Well,
places.
even if it is adult use, you can still have some discussion with somebody about how others have had some
when I went to
success
put
with some health and wellness issues.
hardest patient to enter, and people were calling me up going, Captain, I can't come to Daboween. I don't have a medical card. Well, why don't you get your medical card? Well, I had it, but I'm not renewing it. Well, why aren't you renewing it? Well, I can go into the dispensary and I can buy more weed. I can carry more weed. I can grow more weed than the guy with the medical card. You guys asked me right there, how can I look at that person and tell them, hey, man, you need to go get that medical card. Now, for me, I have my card because when I get stopped, pulled over, a cop enters me, or I go somewhere, I'm the first thing to pull that out. Here you go. I've got my card. But again, with that question, and I would like you guys to answer that when they call me up and say, hey, man, why should I get a card? I can do all this and this, and I can grow more plants. And
First of all, because that's a definition based on their ability to cultivate, not based on their illness, right? So that's a person right there that had a medical card so they could cultivate, not a medical card because they were sick. So right now, that's not necessarily the people we've been talking about so far. We've been talking about really ill people that need help.
And there's some similar language in the MRTMA, but the medical side has been through the courts in some cases, and there are some protections, particularly with driving and some other things that are already, processed through the whole system to have an answer. And if you have that, there's an extra layer of protection.
People V2E only kicks in if you have a medical card, and that's the ability for you to use cannabis on parole or probation, and that only kicks in if you have a medical card. And some employers respect a medical card when you have issues too, even though not everybody has to. And there's, in my mind, there's a million reasons to keep your card, and it's only $40.
I agree.
You know,
2 years now and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I know it's so much easier, and they do telemedicine too now. Kirk, did you know that you can actually just get your cert over the phone? So much easier.
So, hey, Kirk, we've kind of gone on for a while. I apologize, Mike. We're going to get to this conversation, but I'm glad Kirk stopped by. We definitely want to pay tribute to Doug, and it's really interesting to kind of know what's going on in Oklahoma. Also happy that you're planning on bringing the brand back to Michigan. You can help us, loosen up some of the restrictions that are a little bit too tight, like not being able to have nerd ropes.
I will let you folks get on, and I'll stay on here because I always like hearing what Doc's got to say. I would like to thank you, Rick, for showing up to Doug's thing, and a lot of the other people that showed up. Again, when it comes to Doug Orton, there was not a finer man that taught us about cannabis, and definitely the medical side. So thank you both for coming to that. I appreciated that a lot.
Doug was a friend. Yep.
He was one of the giants that Rick refers to, whose shoulders we stand on when we're moving this effort forward. If
there was anyone I could give any credit to for who I am as Captain Kirk or Kirk Reed, it would be Doug Orton. And the rest of you folks there that we fought for this. I stood next to all of you fellows on here and a lot of other people. So thank you all for everything you did. I'm gonna get off and quit talking because I really would like to hear what Doc's got to say.
Right on.
And thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kirk. Appreciate it, man.
Kirk.
We'll talk to you. We'll keep, we'll have you back on. We'll get an update on your progress.
Of August to share things with y'all.
Right on. Thanks, man.
Wait, Doc. I'm ready for it. Man, talk about somebody who's been involved in this effort for a little while now. We're talking about helping out in civil rights and in drug reform and stuff like that. I remember it must have been maybe 10, 12 years ago, sitting in on an ACLU discussion that you were heading up about trying to get some incremental change forward with this stuff. And
really looking for the ways in a really tight time of trying to get some open minds and decision-making capacity, just ways of just like moving it just there. The point was, let's move it forward just a little bit. Just take that little room that they give us and get it, and keep on whittling away at it and see if we can start busting this open. And I remember that discussion from that long ago. And, and of course, you are also a bona fide professor in academia at universities, University of Michigan, University of Detroit, and I think it's University of San Francisco.
Yeah.
Sometimes
don't hold that against me.
But anyway, we're, obviously professional life on one side, and then really, in a large area of just trying to help people, and a lot with this cannabis issue, for years, been an activist and an advocate, and working the political side of it really heavily. So just want to make sure people understand that. And I know you want to let us know about kind of the climate of what's going on federally on the state level, what we can do to help improve things, politically and stuff like that. And am really interested in that. But anything else that you want to say about your background or how you get to, this discussion right now or whatever, please feel free to fill it in.
It reminds me of bringing Ethan Nadelman to the University of Detroit Mercy Law School and having him speak to the law students and the law faculty. As trying to, even to this day, I keep calling my staffer friend at the ACLU and wondering, hey, you're missing in action. Can't you help us up in Lansing with your history and your connections? They're a powerful lobby on behalf of civil liberties, but in my book, they've been missing in action. We've fallen off the to-do list for the ACLU, and it disappoints me. And the Lawyers Guild is another outfit that I've pursued with guys like Buck Davis. They're for criminal justice reform and social justice and civil liberties. We still need to build our coalition bigger and broader and get a seat at the table in some respect and end the stigma. And then when I saw the Fox News was blaming cannabis smokers for gun shootings and massacres, I realized, oh my God, the far right has discovered another scapegoat, another group they can smear, another way they can rile up their base of moralistic crusaders from the religious right that is trying to scare the moms and attack science. And it gave me some more good reasons to urge our community to engage in this election cycle, especially the August 2nd primary, and have everybody pass along the simple advice that you could pick a local race for state house or state senate nearby and look at their records and intervene in both primaries wherever you live, because we should use the primaries as payback for people who voted yes in Lansing on 5512 and people who abandoned Rosemary Bayer in the Senate, who said all I need is 10 of the 16 Democrats in the Michigan Senate and I can block that bill, but they don't quite have their caucus together. We haven't put their feet to the fire. The opportunity to have a little positive payback in the primary in both parties would be something our grassroots could do. And of course, the basics are to get an absentee ballot now and be informed. Ask around, people to assist you in filling the backgrounds and voting records of these people. We've just studied the votes in a couple bills, and I know Americans for Safe Access, Captain Kirk, is following in your spirit and has a revived chapter in Michigan. Maybe you can set up a ASA in Oklahoma if there isn't one, and there probably is one. So we've got to keep medical as our first card to play. It's our strong suit. It shouldn't be buried by our own creative greed instincts by Big Canna, let alone our attempt, as Rick says so well, to keep these people aware we're alive and we want a seat at the table. We demand respect and we demand our rights. So I think the Cannabis Caucus has been terrific. We need a GOP version of that, and you could run for precinct delegate. And we have only 2 weeks left to get these big petitions on the fall ballot that'll help turnout. So people should just get involved locally, join a local club, find out who's running for House and Senate, Dana Nussel has a march in Clawson on the 4th of July. I would love to help people get behind Dana and save our ticket from some kind of bad breaks. We could wake up terribly shocked by extremists winning state office, the Secretary of State. Even the Attorney General is vulnerable. Even the governor, if we continue to see these people attack everything they can find, including our dear movement, that means we need to broaden our coalitions and just use simple language like liberty and freedom and not witch hunting. So, all I'm trying to say is get involved, and then let's give questions to the GOP ticket to find out if this is a wedge issue. Where does this guy Kelly, the guy who was arrested by the FBI last week, where does Dixon fall on the cannabis topic? I don't know yet exactly how they stand on that, and so we've got to protect ourselves from political extremism and the pro-fundamentalist religious right, which now has a majority on the Supreme Court. That's bad medicine for drug reform, even research and medical science, and God knows what it can do to constitutional law and personal freedom. If religion can trump personal freedom, and religion has always tried to trump personal freedom with fear and guilt, we could be just painted into a corner and surprised that we have to play defense on new fronts that we hadn't even considered. So all I'm trying to do is be a facilitator of encouraging people to hook up locally and get involved in the election cycle. I'm glad to be a matchmaker for people who don't know how to get started at their township or at their county level or in a municipality. There are clubs all over the metropolitan Detroit area, and there's guys like Reverend Steve out in Benzie County, so you can work a rural area. If you raise 2 or 3 points for Dana Nussel in a very red rural area of Michigan, you raise a Democratic vote 2 or 3 points for Whitmer, say, that's helping their statewide victory, which is going to be quite narrow this year, simply because of the bad breaks on inflation and gasoline prices and the meat and potatoes that will override a lot of our special issues. So this is going to be a close
Mike,
election.
speaking of that,
Yeah, go ahead.
And Mike, speaking of that, I just want to interject. What do you think about the response to the most recent Supreme Court decision in overturning Roe versus Wade? Does that help galvanize people? Does that help momentum on that side of stuff?
It can't hurt. It can't hurt. And it is a broad issue, especially if you raise, as I have been, to parents with teenage daughters or college age daughters. If they try to outlaw contraception state by state, as it was in the past outlawed, they can't get contraception to go to Michigan State as a freshman. That's going to shift a lot of parents and grandparents, and it might even wake up some of the younger voters not to blow off the primary or blow off the off-year election. Our turnout has got to be high just to mitigate our losses. And if we could get those young people a little bit more engaged, sometimes I think we have to make politics a little more fun, have a little more music, maybe a little more cannabis. We're the perfect agents to make politics a little more fun and have some more music and not make it so angry and so complicated,
divisive,
and boring sometimes, So I know you guys are good souls. We're the agents for a happy ending for this whole damn thing. And I've always believed that cannabis is broader than our injuries and our pain and our psychological trouble and our emotional health. It's bigger than that. We have a message that allows us to relax and be friendly in almost every situation. We're much more low key. We're much better at who we are. And so we have a movement that can stretch across all kind of backgrounds, across from Oklahoma to Michigan, from rural to city, from young to old. We have a little more mojo than we're even giving ourselves full credit for. We're prophets in our own time, literally, and it's multiple. It's got vaster potential than we've fully tapped because they forced us into regulation, over-regulation, and policing, and we're busy on so many fronts. We can't quite get to that philosophic happy ending that I genuinely still see. I'm genuinely like the slogan called "Focus Hope." There's an outfit in Detroit that has a black and white hand touching, and it says "Focus Hope." So if we can do that, and cannabis can be an emotional cure for people's private wounds and people's lack of full self-esteem and people's emotional healing. So I just think we could win the day and help other movements be more positive and visionary and less defensive and fear-based, or even not get too angry over too much either. That's not good for our health. We need to stay here for a long time to win this damn thing. With the help of Captain Kirk.
Yep. Hey, so Mike, where did you envision how far things would go? You know, like around now. Did you ever have that in your mind? Like you hope that, you know, at least so far could be achieved, you know, in a certain amount of time? Are you seeing stuff that surprises you, or did you see this coming?
Well, I had hoped that the young people would respond to their liberation with legal cannabis. I hoped that they would come to this as something in a responsible and even moderated way. They could carry through their lives to stay more present and more friendly and more positive about their life contribution and life itself. So I'm a little disappointed that we haven't done it as well as I had hoped for. I still hang on to the vision of the 60s and 70s, where people were looking for a new way of thinking about their life, their future, and high thinking and simple living. So I call it sometimes the hippie dream among friends. So you'll forgive the language, which is a little dated, but I still cling to that kind of communal goodwill and restoring community. If we restored community, we could learn how to get along with each other. If we have to live up close with each other, we could have a live and let live truce in the cultural war. You go have your whiskey, you have your weed, leave me alone and I'll leave you alone. Don't cause your neighbor too much trouble, and let's have a minimum of civility and decency and respect, and live in community on the planet together.
So we talked on Medical Mondays last night, and we've been joined by Bannister, longtime friend of the show and current mayoral candidate for the city of Ann Arbor. There was a study that came out recently that it was a non-effect kind of a study, or as far as like a medical based one and more psychological based, and it was showing a relationship between those who are more pro-social, compassionate toward each other, and there's a higher percentage of people in those labels who are cannabis users. I mean, it's a really interesting study. I read some excerpts from it on that other show on Medical Mondays last night, and it is really cool. It's kind of seems to be some confirmation or substantiation for a lot about how you approach cannabis and how you discuss it. You know,
it makes us friendlier. It makes us a little more gentle. We're less combative. We're willing to give ground. A lot of times when someone pushes you or tries to push your button, you don't have to respond. You can grant them. But you can, like, there's a blend in the keto. Well, it's called a blend. You step around a troubled person rather than let the troubled person press your buttons. So it makes us peacemakers, and we're probably able to penetrate further into communal conversation than being defensive and being too hypersensitive about people that are troubled or want to push your button or get your goat. So, yeah, friendliness is a way to interact with others and get a good response from them, and maybe get a little bit more live and let live space. So this punitive and exaggerated witch hunting of cannabis that not only was popping up on Fox, to my surprise, but the Wall Street Journal ran some editorial material suggesting the same thing. And then today's New York Times has a headline which alarms me because it shows leakage into the mainstream. As weed becomes more potent, so do its risk. High THC levels have left some teens addicted and dangerously ill. A full-page story. Now, I mean, here we go again. We're back to demonizing cannabis, where you can be in the bar for a couple hours and nobody's going to give you a feature story in the New York Times on spending afternoon in the bar, or even at a tailgate party in Ann Arbor.
Here's an excerpt from the discussion section.
Kind of a bullseye painting. We have a bullseye right taking advantage of.
So, speaking of those who use high THC use as propaganda negatively for it, I pulled up that study, and here's just a little excerpt from it. Acute THC intoxication is usually associated with dampened aggression, positively related to subjective feelings of openness, peace, joy, wonder, spirituality, and a heightened sense of connection to the universe.
Hey, folks, I need to go real quick. I go do my duty vote. But for the lady in Ann Arbor, I wish you the best of luck. I hope people vote for Amy Carter. We need those kind of people on our side.
Yep.
Tell your wonderful little wife I said hello. God bless you fellows for being on here and fighting what you're doing. But I got to go vote. Have a great day.
See you, man. Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you.
And Kirk brings up a good point. We talk about all the work that Mike's done. Gail has been there right with him, doing a lot of really positive work politically and with advocacy and helping people and all that kind of stuff too. So that's true. So, Mike, is there anything else you want to make sure that you get in on this discussion?
Only that helping to elect people like Ann as your local mayor, helping people run for council, running yourself for school board or library board with banning of books, library board. You can just run for some local office or support a friend and get involved locally. We have Democratic clubs in most areas. If you're a Republican, dyed-in-the-wool Republican, you've got to convert to Republican Party and create it. I used to keep after characters who I know in our movement who are Republicans. I said, well, get yourself out. Republicans for drug law reform, or convert that Republican Party. They're supposed to be for liberty and freedom too. They throw those words around freely. Well, let's give us some, at least the liberty and freedom that the beer drinkers get for tailgate parties. And so grassroots, and Ann, you'd vouch for this. I'd make a light joke and say to friends who have never gone to a fundraiser, and there's one for Dana Nussel in Ann Arbor coming up very soon. I say, just a $25 check will make you the candidate's friend for life. And the candidate will know you and love you because you've just written a $25 check. So you don't have to be a billionaire to engage in grassroots politics and make a difference. And once we have that base, we'll get to the table and we'll get more respect and we'll help destigmatize things. So I wish you the best, Ann. I remember several meetings with you over the years, and it's wonderful that Ann Arbor continues to birth beautiful people like yourself.
Thank
I think
you.
of Perry Bullard. You go back far enough to remember Perry Bullard, right?
A little bit.
You're a young woman. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate it. And yes, July 16th, there will be a fundraiser for Dana. If you're interested in that, let me know. Put out some information on it in the next couple of days, and people are interested. There'll be instructions on there, but there's some good response to it so far.
Good.
So we'll see how that goes.
Yes.
So Ann, yeah, you've been on the show before. We've talked about several different things, supporting the entheogen movement. Obviously very supportive of the cannabis, rights and movement and stuff like that. And I see you were a council member for at least a term, if not two, right?
A 3-year term, yes.
Right.
20.
Okay.
Mhm.
And and I agree with Dr. Detroit. It's great that somebody with your kind of a approach and understanding and experience is available to serve as such a great city's mayor. And I'm also excited for the county of Washington at large, because I've been able to go to some other fundraisers besides Dana's coming up, for local, for Jimmy Wilson, for state representative, for Annie Somerville, for county commissioner, and others. And obviously Ellie Savitt's already there with Victoria Burton Harris. And I'm just really excited for the county of Washington, for people such as yourself being able to be in such capacities in there. How is your campaign going?
It's going very well, actually. I pulled petitions back on March 29 as sort of a last thought, because we had been trying to get Yusuf Rabi to run for mayor, and he declined. He's running for county commissioner. So that was, I decided that there is enough concerns with the current direction that we're on with my opponent that he shouldn't run unopposed. So I pulled petitions, and we ended up finding that there were people all over the city clamoring for a change and bringing back more of this, more of a people-oriented city hall and local government, rather than sort of the thumb on the scale, if you will, for development interests and big money elite corporate interests, which I know that you all deal with. You, Rick, and everything. I read your comments about those problems in Lansing. We have them big time here at the Ann Arbor City Hall. So I'm sort of the opposite of the current administration, where I try very hard to listen to residents and implement, use local government to actually implement their best ideas, which was actually how the whole decriminalize Ann Arbor came about back in September of 2020, where the local Decriminalize Ann Arbor Club had brought that great idea to us to decriminalize mushrooms. And so I ran with it, and I was that sort of being in the right place at the right time to help implement good ideas.
Yeah, that passed. So just for a reminder for people, that policy passed to essentially lowest level enforcement priority for entheogenic plants and fungi or fungus, however it reads, and that was passed by the city council.
Yes.
Unanimously. And in the next session, after you weren't there, they made September entheogenic and fungus month or something like, or
Yes.
appreciation month or something like that. So on this issue, on those issues anyway, the whole council's pretty good, but they might have in other cases maybe some other bents that you think could be improved on. It sounds like.
Yes, with our the whole issue of how much resident participation and engagement we have, and I'm a very strong advocate for that, and also not just having the public meeting, but actually not letting that information fall on deaf ears. Actually, we're dealing with a lot of land stewardship issues where there's concern that if we don't change the direction we're on, we will be destroying a lot of our green infrastructure and woodlands and ecosystems in the next few years. We're making irrevocable decisions where we're transferring the rights to the big elite group of landowners. And so,
Right.
yeah.
So you came in behind. Why does her name escape me? So Sabre, yeah.
Sabre Briere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking it, I couldn't say it when I went to go say it. And of course, one of the things I really liked about Sabre was the way that she would evaluate an issue or a subject matter and really think about it and genuinely try to decide what the best answer is. She wasn't transactional, and she was on our side for cannabis because she really considered the issue and decided it makes more sense to have a better policy than what's currently going on, and followed suit like that. And I know you came in and really you're your own person, had your own approach and things like that, but that same basic way of kind of going about that you possess, and I think that's appreciated a lot by people at large, and particularly in our community, because we need that in order to help get the truth perpetuated and be useful for people who are making decisions. And to say that you want to bring it back to that, where you really get in information from the people of the community and then consider it. And that's important. That's, people might take that for granted. Like that goes on all the time, but that's not the case. And many of us have learned that by going around the state, talking about cannabis and sitting in on these meetings.
Yes. Government by the people, for the people. We're working hard tirelessly. That's the most rewarding thing about this work, is working with creative and talented people to implement systemic change and good policies.
Right.
Very rewarding. And there's a lot to be done. I think, a lot of what you all work on in local government language can fall under increasing mental health services.
Right.
And so there's a lot of good things going on that we need to shepherd through the local government to bring them to fruition.
Keep access there and have the government help to provide it instead of be a hinder to it. PTSD is the only thing psychological condition that's formally recognized on the list for medical cannabis, but it likely extends past that in terms of the different things it can somehow help with,
yes,
from what we understand. So I agree, like that should be one of the things that's available to people when they find themselves in need for their, whatever their situation is.
And I am, so first off, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, guys.
And as a disabled veteran who suffers with PTSD, and I appreciate the efforts that Ann Arbor put into allowing entheogenic plant access, right? Because for me, as a person who's been poisoned with every pharmaceutical under the sun by the VA, specifically, it was ayahuasca that really changed my life. And it was, that first mushroom experience, that is what induced healing in my life. So to see, on the flip side, I currently live in Macomb County, in Macomb Township, which is one of the most, in my opinion, they're on the forefront of regression. They're cannabis hostile. They don't want these things. And for me as a voter, what I've noticed is some of the greatest examples of the regressions of freedom and liberty are not happening at the federal level to where they're affecting the everyday citizen. It's at the local level, and it's local politics that are really affecting the average everyday citizen. Do you see that as a shift that's a rift even that's becoming greater as we divide as a nation at the local level? Or do you still see hope out there? Are you hopeful that there is still room to improve?
Yes. I think there is a problem, what we've seen with the Supreme Court, even trying to dismantle government and government's power, not only with reproductive rights and potentially marital rights, but I just got a new article from the Washington Post about the EPA. They're trying to cut the EPA off at the knees. And so a lot of this stuff is, unfortunately, unless, you guys may have heard with the Supreme Court, President Biden could add members to the Supreme Court, but that's sort of the nuclear option. But if we are not getting support from the federal level because of these problems, it is coming down to Governor Whitmer here in Michigan and municipalities leaders like the next mayor of the city of Ann Arbor. And so I'm committed to, representing these ideas and working with peer cities all around the country to do the right thing and help hold the door open at City Hall, as it were, for the people, so that City Hall is a welcoming and efficient and doing good things for people proactively, systemic changes, especially and with like opioid, substance abuse disorders, and all of those problems are another area of mental health services that's growing. And so we need to stay on the track. And so, yeah, I would love to implement all of our good ideas.
And so I know there's some stuff being worked on the statewide level. There is a statewide petition circulating for abortion rights there, and there's the governor and attorney general fighting the reverting back to the 1931 law that prohibited most abortions and stuff like that. But I do remember in the late 90s, and in fact I mentioned it at the last year's Entheo Fest, that I think it was in the late 90s, the Ann Arbor became a reproductive freedom zone by making performing and having an abortion a civil infraction, small fine ticket, in the event something like this were to happen. And I guess 25 years later or so, it happened.
Yes. And I do believe our current mayor, I wouldn't be surprised at all if there is some resolutions to that effect. That is one of the things that everyone here, most everyone in Ann Arbor agrees on. So I wouldn't be surprised if at the July 5th city council meeting, there may be a resolution to that effect.
I wonder how that would then affect University of Michigan's hospital's policy, or the other. I guess St. Joseph is the other one in the area that's a big health system. You heard about Beaumont put out a statement saying they were going to follow current federal law, and now it only in whatever the parameters are that they said, but they basically said they were reverting back to the 1931, taking it upon themselves because of this federal change to revert back to the 1931 law.
That's very unfortunate. Yes.
Yeah.
And I also read that like the HIPAA rights, our privacy of our medical records is in jeopardy under the, if it's
so the ability to use drugs, it's supposed to be individual right. That's that's in question too, based on some of this constitutional interpretation.
Yeah, but the HIPAA issue is very significant because a local unit of government that has no medical reason to know your history might be able to demand your medical records from a provider so they can examine what procedures you've had or what advice you've been given. And that's a terribly slippery slope. At what point do we start identifying all kinds of things we don't want doctors to do, and then just say willy-nilly we can start demanding records? It's all quite frightening. This is we're approaching
it is in totality. I agree. This whole thing is peeling back rights, mandating shit on people. I mean, it's really fucked up. It's archaic.
Our autonomy of individual people is being threatened every which way.
I find the people that fought the hardest for the right to not wear a mask are now the people fighting hardest for the right to to disallow other people to make choices like that. It's I suppose personal choice is based on your perspective. Sometimes you want people to have it, sometimes you don't want people to have it for whatever reason you have, whether it be religious or whether it's because there's a healthcare crisis going on. So this is one of the reasons why America is so evenly divided, because these issues aren't black and white. They're not just easy. You can't just say you believe something that everybody in the world thinks is wrong.
I think there's a clear majority that supports Roe as it was.
Oh, I think so too.
Yeah.
All polls indicate that most Americans, if you take a look at that.
Well, because it doesn't end abortion, it just makes it illegal. So they will still go on.
It's dangerous potentially, but it doesn't stop the behavior that people have issues with. And the thing is, I understand they don't like it, and they don't have to, and they can choose not to participate. I mean, we all know how that works. This is backwards. Nobody has ever restricted that approach. Why should your approach, which isn't universally accepted, be imposed on everybody else?
How about 2 Supreme Court justices who flat out lied to Congress in order to get their seats on the Supreme Court, who flat out said this is settled law and there's no reason for us to upset the apple cart with Roe v. Wade. And then as soon as opportunity presented itself, boom, they were like,
it was even upheld in the subsequent case. That makes it even stronger. And they mentioned that too during those hearings.
Yep.
The person who put in there believes in alternate realities and untruths and lying and bullshit. That's
rewards that.
And rewards it with basically elevating folks to the highest levels of our government.
Remember how that third justice got in there? It was so fucked up because it was so contradictory to the former situation when Gorish, who's now our AG, was selected, and it was like a year and a half away from the elections, and McConnell kept on stonewalling it, saying it's too close to the elections, and the people should decide.
Would not let any Supreme Court justices get a vote in the Senate.
Yeah, several months away.
Right.
Several months away from the elections. The last woman got it. What's her name again? I'm sorry, I can't think of the new justice's name. One that tipped the scales.
Ketanji Brown.
Yes. No, not the most. No, the one. The most recent.
Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah.
Amy Coney Barrett. That's who
you're
thinking of?
Yeah, I think that is.
This is a lot of this. I think what it all boils down to is the abandonment of precedents. That really is what it comes down to. The fact that they are so willing to abandon what has been held to be true and kind of off limits for so long. We're now abandoning precedents, and now people are saying, you know what, screw you, we're not going to do that.
I was going to say, speaking of banning the president, so that happened then, and then with this person, Amy Coney Barrett, there were votes already being cast in the presidential election when they pushed her through.
Hypocrisy is the currency in Washington.
I mean, that's not a surprise when they're pointing that out. That's how that shit worked. It wasn't.
It's about power. It's not about the people anymore. It's about maintaining power, period.
People will change their position on an issue in a second if it means gaining power or money or some advantage,
Well, and let's face it, there's spin doctors out there who are very good at helping someone completely flip their position 180 degrees and spin it as if this has been the plan all along, or that this is secretly some kind of a benefit to their constituents. Because media and the way you look in media really determines the public's reality to a great extent. They don't ever get a chance to talk to someone like Ann Bannister, although Ann's out in the public all the time, talking to folks every chance he gets. But if an Ann Arbor news report happens to say something, unless you can see Ann personally to be able to dispute that, that might be the only information you get. That's why there's such a heavy responsibility on people who communicate through media to get it right. And the current perversion of that policy is just atrocious, where everything is an advertorial. Everything's trying to push a particular angle. And it looks to the uninitiated like raw, straight news. It's very tough to distinguish.
A lot of smoke and mirrors. They're good at it,
Yep.
Yes. I think that's a good, but that's why all of us were swept out of council in 2020, why we lost our seats on council, was because there was a big bunch of, if coming from my opponent directly, an email, full of misinformation.
Yeah. That's how it works.
Yeah. Washington style right here in Ann Arbor.
Well, that's why we need to get people, friends, to take out absentee ballots now and vote for their candidates for August 2nd, and just keep plugging at it. Know it's a life's work. It'll be a journey we'll continue the rest of our lives to bring a little more liberty and freedom. It's a funny thing that the ultra-right tosses the words liberty and freedom around, but they don't really want to offer us local autonomy, community-based decision-making, and a measure of privacy and personal liberty. It's kind of ironic that we can't win over the people that want all this freedom and autonomy to reject science and public health, but they don't want to grant it to cannabis or anybody else that somehow crosses the moral territory they're claiming to defend in the name of Jesus 2020 or something like that. It
gives up power.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
money
Mike,
and power. Yeah.
Dr. Whitty, I know you talked earlier about the need for us to come together and to be more compassionate with each other. But if you look at Dixon and Kelly's an insurrectionist. He was there on January 6th. He was picked up by the FBI because he was doing wrong things when he was there on January 6th. Yeah. And the other candidate is she's completely nuts, man. And she's an anti-abortion, Christian values, anti-public school type of a person. She really doesn't reflect the morals of the people of the state of Michigan. So in some instances, I have to say, when we talk about those candidates, I really don't care what their stance on cannabis is. There are some of the other heinous aspects to their personality that I wouldn't want to support them should they get in office, period. Yeah. And not just because of their party.
Be good for those more conservative, more libertarian, more Republican-minded people who are genuine to hear the position. If it's not necessarily totally genuinely in support of cannabis rights, people who care about that should know what their position is, though.
There it is.
Unless they're going to totally bullshit about it, which is also very possible.
Getting them on record, there's a value to it, no question about it. But I was just speaking from my position. I'm a very well-known Democrat.
Given all the other issues and their positions on them, it's not worth having the totality of opposition to your views. That I understand. Yeah, I feel very similarly.
It would be helpful if we could get their positions on cannabis, and that would help some of our single-issue voters who are not that political. They're somewhat apolitical. Good old boy.
That's kind of what I meant, I guess.
And get them registered and voting and taking absentee ballots, and let them be single-issue voters if that tips them against these people that Rick has identified, who are already well beyond the pale. Hate and extremism is their mother's milk. So if they are bad on our issue, that helps protect our ticket, and it helps bring out a segment of our people who are skeptical of everything, skeptical of all government, of all parties, of all systems. The whole thing turns off, and they become non-voters. That's why a small extremist element of our society can wag the dog, so to speak. So they keep plugging out. Let's research these characters and put puncture another hole in their boat, Rick, to sink it.
Yeah,
and don't look at just their glossy postcard. If they've been in office or served in the community at all, which they may not have, look at their real record and policies, not what shows up on the glossy postcard by any stretch.
Yeah. Amen.
That's all part of the modern that's been going on for a long time, actually. But people will come in and do the mailers, do the email thing, to get on the local media, and just bullshit. Sway enough people at the day of the polls and get in. We've seen it way too many times.
That's why they have rules about not being able to give out flyers within a certain distance from polling places, because people used to strong arm folks right at the door before you walked in. And that was acceptable political behavior. Who had the biggest thugs on that particular day won the election sometimes. And I mean, we've progressed so far past that, but right now we face a lot of challenges, including challenges to election security. Some of our electors are being threatened. We also have questions about voting machines and absentee ballots potentially being gone away. A radical change to the voter registration rolls, especially Kevin Rinke's been putting out he's a candidate for governor here in Michigan for the Republican primary. Been putting out all kinds of advertisements talking about cleaning up the voter rolls. I don't think I trust that guy to do any cleaning jobs at all. So we really have a lot of election concerns here in the state in 2022.
Yeah, I know a handful of conservative / Republicans who support Dana because of her position on cannabis.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you were trying to get in. Go ahead, Ann.
No, I wasn't trying to get in, but yes, I look forward to seeing you all on July 16th for Dana's fundraiser.
And someday, Anton, I want to come out to your fundraiser when you run in Macomb Township for township supervisor. Okay.
Look, these people would have no clue what to do with me. I'll tell you that. Because here's the thing about Macomb Township. I'll tell you this. It is not what it used to be. There has been such an influx of young families with moderate views. We need some moderation in this area. We don't want Jesus and God and all this crazy stuff. Everybody is free to do what you want.
Yeah,
don't
just not
force
in the
that on
government,
us.
right?
Don't force that.
Do it all
on
you
us.
want. Don't
Look,
throw it in the government. Right.
If you tell me God told you to make a decision, I'm not going to vote for you because that just doesn't set right with me, right? So, but if that's your belief system and that's where your morals, I support that 100%, right? But what it is we need homeostasis. We need moderation. We need healing. We need to come together as a community. So yeah, they wouldn't know what to do with me.
No. Yeah, it used to be that only wealthy people could be able to get into a place like Macomb Township, and they bought up huge tracts of land. And then there was this trend towards what they called McMansions. Now, these are good-sized homes, don't get me wrong, and young, successful professional couples, two-income couples, power couples, the eights, the A personality types. They come in and they buy them up, and oftentimes they don't share those same values as the older people that are already pre-existing in there. And it does, I hate to use the term water down because I think maybe, moderate is a better way to describe it, but it does change a political character of a zone.
I walk around my neighborhood and it's like, I've lived here 7 years, right? And it's uncomfortable because I'm all tattooed up. I'm a younger dude, right? And I'll walk around and I am not what Macomb Township used to be, right? But there are a lot more people like me, and it's not just Macomb Township. There's a lot of communities throughout Michigan where people we want some sort of consensus, right? Even if we don't hold the same beliefs, we want to be able to get along. Like Doc, I wish I had your perspective. I listened to you and I'm like, man, I really wish because I'm a fighter, right? I believe in going all in, and I believe in fight until I have no fight left in me. And I wish more of the younger generation, I'm 40, so I'm more middle-aged now, I guess, but I want all of us, I want all the communities to come together, whether you're left, you're right, you're in the middle, and at least realize, folks, at the end of the day, none of this shit matters when Russia and China decide to stick it in our ass. If that's forgive my language on that,
you represent a perfect candidate. You represent an ideal candidate from within our ranks as a veteran, and if you could begin campaigning secretly for the tattoo vote, secure the tattoo vote in the township, and you may have a strong coalition partner.
I appreciate that, Doc. I do 100%.
Yep, I'm like a henna vote, so I'm like, I support the tattoo guys, but I don't want, I'm not completely committed, so more one of those middle ground guys.
Yeah, I appreciate them. I've just never really been motivated to get one, I guess.
No, I think
it's kind of common, from your era, kind of, very popular.
I was a military dude, I was pretty popular in the military and whatnot. And you get one, it's like my war paint, I call it, except for Willie Nelson's signature. I do have Willie Nelson's autograph. I got to meet Willie and he signed my arm and I turned it into a tattoo. So that's like my favorite possession in the world. But, it's art. It's a self-expression. And it's really what what my generation I feel about is what we want to express ourselves. Yeah. People that grew up in the 80s and the 90s, right? we were kind of in between the baby boomers in the 60s and the 70s, and we were trying to find our way. And unfortunately, I think that we went way to the other end on the younger generation now, and we all need to live together, and we all need to live together in peace, because there are much darker forces at bay here who are trying to tear us apart. And we need more folks like Ann. We need more folks like everybody on this panel, because what's coming, what I forecast to be coming, it's just not going to be good. You can't do a civil war and World War III at the same time, guys. It's just not going to work.
Well, it certainly works for the enemies of the country, right? Having us divided internally helps our external enemies exponentially. So when we see Russia's just change their oil exports from Europe to China, and they're really avoiding the critical effect of some of the sanctions that we put on them, their disincentive to continue in Ukraine is kind of taken away.
And they're expected to fuck with the elections again here. And there's a big contingency of people who think that is a lie.
Yeah, no, the cybersecurity thing about elections, we have a real problem with not being able to control what goes out on social media through our populace. I believe that what we really should do is just make all elections government funded. Everyone in the race gets a certain amount of money. There's no external funding. There's no influence peddling, and it certainly evens the financial playing field. And that way, someone's personal wealth doesn't come into play as far as whether or not they become electable. Right? You're a wonderful person, but that guy's a millionaire, so I'm going to back him because he can probably finance his campaign better than you, even though you are a wonderful person. That's not the way American politics was meant to be. I think our founding fathers would probably roll over if they knew that's exactly how elections were being bought and sold in America right now.
That's true, Rick. It's definitely true that you can buy a seat. You can buy all of city council if you want.
Yeah, one good marketing campaign, right, Ann? I mean, really.
Right.
Yeah.
As a
Something
matter of
needs
fact,
to change.
yeah.
I know, that's what I mentioned. Yeah. I just really feel like when we look at restoring American confidence in government, there's been a lot of reasons why Americans have lost faith in their government. Number one, in my mind, is the drug war, the big lie, the biggest lie of all, right? But if you look at the Iran-Contra affair, look at, searching for weapons of mass destruction, suicide or death squads in Nicaragua under Reagan. I mean, you can go back all of the different examples you can find of government behaving poorly, and you can easily lose faith. But what we really need to do is to find something we can do to help people restore their faith in government. One of the easiest things to do is federally legalize cannabis. It's the most popular illicit substance used in the United States of America. It's vastly popular with everybody, more popular than any politician. It's 63% in 2008 when cannabis passed in Michigan for medical in 2008. It was a 63% vote, which is greater than the vote the governor got or anybody else. So,
and not only legalize, I'll say this, not only legalize, but not penalize after we legalize it, right?
So,
that's a bigger problem as well.
there is a congressional committee meeting today that will vote on protecting state marijuana programs from federal interference.
Yeah. Well, once again, the Republicans block all of those efforts. Mitch McConnell, for way too many years now, has stopped us from having things like the Safe Banking Act, like having exoneration for federal cannabis prisoners, any kind of positive cannabis advancement. The only thing we've gotten out of the government was that they said instead of just one place, the University of Mississippi, to grow federal cannabis for research purposes, we'll give you more places. But yet that's still not realized because I don't think there are any other places that are under cultivation right now. So we've really seen the Republicans be the stopper from all these good things that we've created in the House, right with the Senate. So as long as that continues to be the case, we'll still struggle with, people regaining confidence in the government based on their cannabis stance.
I asked this to Dr. Whitty earlier, but Ann, do you see a response to the Supreme Court decision in terms of like maybe people galvanizing and getting more motivated to want to respond in order to help effect change this year at the ballot box, kind of like there was in response to the 2016 elections? There's
paying attention better. Yes, we've been knocking doors and people have been devastated, and they're making their plans to where they're going to leave the United States. Some of them, they're so distraught about the path that we're on. They're thinking about their citizenship in other nations.
We need a two-front war. We need to befriend and have a more intergenerational movement so that we have the youth vote. And those of us who are elders can now safely talk to our fellow seniors, including those who have never touched cannabis. The seniors, because their bodies are frail and they're more fragile, they are open to the medical work that Americans for Safe Access does, and our earlier conversation with Captain Kirk dealt with. So we could appeal both to conservative seniors as their peers, if you will, those of us over 50. Anton, you have the middle of the three generations to win over, and you're the perfect candidate for us. And then we've got to find somewhere for the parents and grandparents to help the teens and 20-somethings realize they're out to take away contraceptive pills. They're out to take away a lot of personal autonomy and freedom and privacy in ways that are really rather mean and over the top and quite extreme. Even for a Wild West country that's had its share of extremism and racism and slavery, we're running backwards now, and we've got to be prophets in our own time and turn this boat around in our lifetime, intergenerationally. Together we could tip this election or mitigate our losses nationally and hold Michigan as a swing state. We might be a lead primary state in 24. It's so hard to get people out in a primary in the middle of summer or in an off-year election. But in 24, we may face Trump or DeSantis and have a turn like Anton worries about, a turn that would be even worse than the Trump era, because he's focused, smart, and mean. Was Trump never focused or smart, but he was mean. So it could get before it gets better.
Well,
Yep.
I think part of the purpose behind the January 6th committee, trying to establish Trump's role in the insurrection, sedition, whatever you want to call it, is to create a legal parameter to block him from having access to the 2024 election. If you can prove that he participated in that, then he's no longer eligible for any government role. And that, to me, case made. To me, I'm already convinced. I've heard it. I've seen it. You're listening to stories of him specifically telling people, I need you to upset the course of the due election in Georgia and in other places, Arizona. That qualifies. But I think for the nation at large, they might need a little bit more evidence. But we're going to see by the time January 6th committee finishes up, there's enough dirty laundry on Trump having been aired now that I think it might not be possible for him to actually be on the slate in 2024.
So you know what? I've seen comments like this, and I'm, sorry for kind of like talking about this perma sleep too.
He writes January 6th is baloney for those.
Yeah, but what I haven't seen is the convincing reasoning to contradict all of the information that's been presented.
Yep.
In this way. You're talking about testimony live, official documents, texts that were, found in communications that were found, video.
Encouraging people to hang Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States of America.
And, I understand that it's not like the image or the perspective that many people have had or want to have, but I haven't seen a good reason to deny the information, and in lieu of that means it has to be considered when you're trying to figure out where the truth most likely is, and sometimes that's not what we want to hear. Sometimes it's a dizzying reversal of what we really thought it was like. And it's weird, but here's the reality of the information. I mean, I don't know how you really contradict it. I'm open if there's a real thing to look at. Go ahead, Anton.
No, I was going to say, when we talk about extremism, and I'm just now getting into more of my background, sharing it out there because I want people to know where I came from. And, after I got out of the military, I worked for many different federal agencies. I did have the privilege at one point of serving with the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, right? And domestic terrorism was my specialty. That's what I did, specifically sovereign citizens. And, so as an individual who got to kind of the back curtain look into how this stuff unfolds, it's really troubling to me because everything seems extreme to me nowadays, and not just in the sense of it sounds extreme, but it looks extreme based on its definition on both the left and the right. And I can't even imagine being involved with that type of task force nowadays, because they're probably working 24 hours a day. Right. And what folks do know about me as well is I was a medical cannabis patient at one point while I was a federal employee with a top secret security clearance. And that's ultimately what ended my career. And I am so thankful that I had gotten to see that perspective. But, when we talk about the government not tolerating a lot of these different things, for years, I was one of the most trusted individuals. They trusted me with all kinds of crazy shit. But it wasn't until they found out I was a medical cannabis patient that I then became, we cannot trust this guy. And it's those types of disconnects. If we want the younger generation to be able to engage with government and do these types of jobs, because, we need those types of folks. We need people who are willing to go after the boogeyman, right? If we don't have them, shut the lights off and everybody goes home, right? So I want to see more, and I hope that's the one thing I represent with my story is I was somebody who gave it all for the country. And because of medical cannabis, I was an asshole at the end of the day. Right. And I hope people hear that, and I hope they take that, and I hope they do these types of things to get into, become more engaged with our government, become involved and ask questions, because there's a lot of bullshit going on just everywhere. And it's sad. And I'm glad I don't do it anymore.
I experienced that stigma too from my work, on council with the entheogenic plants and speaking at the hash bash and all. I think I still get people stigmatized, that stigmatized me too, unfortunately. But
and that's sad. Doesn't make any sense. It's I don't understand it.
No.
It's very true that we can point to a lot of different ways in which the government has failed, but the important thing to recognize is that we still need government in order to keep the boogeyman away, as Anton mentioned. And right now there are more boogeymen in society than ever before, and they're troubled youths that get access to firearms, and they're disgruntled and unemployed white guys who can't hold down a job, and then are looking for someone to blame it on, and they get recruited by some fast talking skinhead believer, and all of a sudden you've got a domestic terrorist created out of a guy who was just down on his luck. So we have a lot of things to worry about here in the United States. On a local level, though, and a lot of those things we just talked about are more big picture as opposed to local. But do you foresee in the city of Ann Arbor the potential for trouble? Certainly, when people like the Proud Boys want to come to Michigan to make a statement, Ann Arbor seems like a natural place to go, considering its liberal bent and its international status. So,
yes, well, and they do. They come right down Main Street with the same big Trump truck with flags and blaring music super loud, and it can be just one truck, or it can be a parade of I've seen 20, 30 trucks come past on this year, like, yeah. And so they parade around, and our police department, who's heavy into community policing, Police Chief Michael Cox is a good guy. They've got to deal with this group. So yeah, they do come here, and it's shocking because we're all walking around going to the farmers market buying flowers and whatnot, and living our peaceful lives. And so I think one of the things that we can do along, to not be to help these extremists get off that bandwagon is affordable housing. Make sure that there are places to live, because I think their level of anxiety could be partly because of how hard life is now. And
That's hard for Ann Arbor, though, isn't it? Everything's been developed in Ann Arbor. Like,
yes.
it'd be hard to find some place to do that.
Well, we are looking at a very controversial is our transit corridor developments, where you look at old strip malls that are already covered in asphalt that have too extra parking. For example, Sears at Briarwood down at the State and Eisenhower corner is an area where we all agree that they could put in some more high rise.
Right, that makes sense.
I'm not convinced people enjoy living in high rises necessarily, but that is a good dense housing option.
More units in the space available, right?
Yep.
Yep. Of course, it's always a tough challenge when you've got parking issues as well as housing issues too. So
Yes.
In those type of facilities, unless you're incorporating parking on a lower level and then housing above that, you have twice the demand. And high rises are such a population dense type of a facility. It takes a lot of support space in order to make it work.
And we're kind of closing in a little bit. On 6, look, Anton dropped. Maybe he'll come back before the end of the show, maybe not. But how can people learn more about your camp? Maybe somebody wants to help out your campaign. Maybe somebody wants to see where you are on some issues. Is there some direction you can give people?
Definitely. Thank you for asking. People can visit Bannister 4 mayor.com and learn more there. And what we really need as a grassroots campaign, we do need people spreading the word, telling their friends that we do have a choice in Ann Arbor for our next mayor who's going to be there for 4 years and doing a lot of important decisions for the community. And also fundraising. If you know any multimillionaires who would like to see Ann Arbor being represented by the people, for the people, then we are definitely fundraising, because it costs tens of thousands of dollars to mail one postcard to every voter. So
yeah, you're running for the whole city's approval. You're not in just an
right.
individual district. That expands the effort and the costs and all that kind of stuff. That's not a small city,
Yes.
So it's 150,000 or something like that.
Oh, last I read just this week, it's the population is like 126,000, and then the students are on top of that when they're here, and then but the actual voters, because we still have this partisan primary in August, so historically about 36,000 people actually vote in August, but that's getting bigger as absentee voting has gotten easier.
Okay, good.
So we study all that, and we identify who actually votes, who's registered to vote, and who's voting. And so we make sure those people know that they have a choice for mayor and a few of their council seats.
It makes sense. I'm glad that you're there doing it.
Yes.
Appreciate it. We'll get an update. Hopefully we'll have a victory discussion.
Yes.
In a few weeks. And that would be really cool if you were the mayor of Ann Arbor.
It would be. Then we could start sharpening pencils, not knives, and work on our agenda.
That's
awesome.
John Sinclair Day going. Yes.
John Sinclair Day too. We're going to talk about that as soon as you're in.
Excellent.
I appreciate it. And I'm serious about that too. Hey, Dr. Detroit, would you like to leave us with anything before we wrap it up?
Well, I admire the show you guys do every week. It's terrific, and you're doing, adult education at its best. You're providing information that is just not available in the rest of our media unless you're a wonk and you're on a lot of good lists. If you're a regular citizen, you're just not getting the information on not just our issue, but gee whiz, our daily papers in Detroit do a poor job of keeping people even aware of the election. And there's not a good media climate right now. They only look for sensational, wild charges against cannabis as causing mass murder. That it's not the guns that are killing people, it's the cannabis. Behind it all is that demon weed. So there's still some mileage in demonizing us. And they've made a surprising breakthrough on so many other fronts, attacking science, medicine, public health, the schools, teachers. They won't leave a rock unturned if they can smear a group and scare some soccer mom and make her jumpy and frightened. They'll go for the throat of even our cause. So we have to be sure our folks are awake and alert and looking through their binoculars.
Right on. We have a nice family of podcasts covering a lot of ground. I think we do kind of cover Michigan cannabis politics a little bit more thoroughly than most, though. Whoever's into that little narrow vision.
Grant you that.
Yeah. So we're pretty good. Thank you, Mike, for coming on. Thank you, Ann, very much for coming on. We had Anton, who just jumped off. We had Captain Kirk on here. So
thanks, you guys.
So very much so appreciate it. And Rick, would you like to wrap us up and end another great show?
I just want to call attention to our special Thursday broadcast we had last week, which dealt with the Veritas Lab scandal here in the state of Michigan. We talked about it briefly at the beginning of the show itself, and it sparked some additional conversation about some regulations and restrictions on a state level. Speaking with Ann, talking about different things that can be done on a municipal level is always interesting. And then we had a big discussion about federal changes and some of the things that could happen in a big picture way. I understand sometimes we like to cruise through life, and sometimes it's stressful to keep an eye on the news. But you gotta play the game with your eyes open, especially if you're a cannabis consumer. So many things going on around you. If you don't know, you miss out, or you support somebody who you really shouldn't. So my lesson for today is just play the game with your eyes wide open, people. And Jazz Cabbage is a great way to do that.
Right on. I appreciate it. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back next week. Jazz Cabbage Cafe. See ya.